Good morning, everyone. My name is Bevan Landrum, and I'm the Donor Engagement Officer for the J. Whitney Bunting College of Business at Georgia College. I'm here today joined by Rob Betzel. He is a Georgia College Foundation trustee who has spent the last 20 years as the owner and CEO of Infinity Network Solutions. But last October, Rob sold his business so that he could help other entrepreneurs get the most out of their businesses. In his 20 years of business experience, Rob saw some huge periods of IT change, but he also was witness to great economic change in our country. And so today we've asked him to come join us to share some key thoughts, efforts, and tools that he has used to not only survive, but thrive in these periods of change. This is the third installment of an entrepreneurship series that Georgia College has been doing in collaboration with the Milledgeville Baldwin Chamber of Commerce and their Task Force for Recovery and Resiliency. So Rob, we're super excited to have you with us today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we're going to jump right in.
All right.
As entrepreneurs have seen their worlds turned literally upside down during this pandemic, they are searching. I mean, we hear in surveys and feedback from our engagement with business owners that they're searching for some kind of solid foundation to move forward. So what would you feel are the key things that they should be focused on kind of as they're looking into the future?
Yeah, so it's funny. I have spent 20 years running an IT company, and we have a saying with Infinity was that the only thing inevitable is change. And if you don't love change, love irrelevance. And so we operated in a lot of change in a constant basis. But when I look at really across all industries now that I have a chance to work with other entrepreneurs, I really think there's sort of four things that people should focus on. And this really should be what you do every day, but especially when you sort of get that period of time when you're uncertain. You should focus on clarity and not certainty. You should focus on how you are a great boss for your team. And you should focus on self-care. How do you take care of yourself? And I think you should focus on growth. Every opportunity of change comes the opportunity to grow your business. And so I think part of what you should be looking at is it time to grow? So I think those are the four areas that as I'm working with entrepreneurs, all throughout the state of Georgia and really about the country, those are the four things I see most people needing to spend more time on.
Okay, so I just heard you mention two key words, certainty and clarity. And you said you can't have certainty, but you can definitely have clarity. And what do you exactly mean by that? What does that mean for an entrepreneur?
Yeah, so when I talk to entrepreneurs, everybody wants certainty, right? They want to be certain of what's going to happen. What's going to happen tomorrow? When is there going to be a vaccine for a pandemic? Who's going to win an election? And I don't think you can have certainty. I think that's one of the few things in this world that in business you can't have. We can't be certain that what we build is going to work for our clients. We can't be certain that we're going to find the right number of clients. We can't be certain that we're going to have the right team. But I think we have clarity about what we're after. And so helping entrepreneurs really get clear about the things they can control and the things they can't. What is it that I am clearly focused on? What do I clearly need to deliver that to my, customer client? Clearly, who do I need to be on my team? And how do I give them clarity of what they're supposed to be doing to be successful? So really, I spend a lot of time with entrepreneurs talking about clarity versus certainty. And so a lot of the people I worked with recently wanted to know, we need to wait until we're certain who's going to be president. My answer is we're going to have one. So let's just move forward with clarity about what we can do. And so I really, I challenge entrepreneurs to say, where is the clarity we need? And so when we get really sideways with the uncertainty of things, so let's slow down. Let's go back to the basics, right? What are our mission, our vision, our values? Why do we start the business? What are we trying to accomplish? What is the purpose of the business? And then really going back, and if you've been a successful entrepreneur, you've built a good, what I call a 10-year target or a BHAG, that big, hairy, audacious goal. What did I want to be way out in the future? And then I've built a closer proximity 3-year picture that gives me a little more definition about in 3 short years, what should my business look like? And then we've built 1-year plans, right? Stop and build a 1-year plan. What are my goals around this year? And in goal setting, what I find is people try to set too many goals. It's the here are the 42 things I want to accomplish this year. I'm a keep it simple, stupid guy. And so for me, it's 3 to 7, never more than 7, never less than 3 things I want to accomplish this year. They're big things that I want to accomplish. And you just, what you have to do is when things get uncertain, you know, stop, go back to those basic plans and say, why did I start? What are my plans? What are my goals? And what do I need to do to achieve them? I did consulting at the end of last year with clients who built great plans for 2020, only to see them go totally haywire in February. And the answer wasn't, well, I guess we'll just not have a plan anymore. The answer was no, let's stop.
Well,
Let's
that's so
consider.
important. Just planning and visioning for the future, because that is often an area where we do have some amount of control, at least in determining where we want to go. So as we let go of the certainty of that, how do you really set that vision for an uncertain future? What are some key things kind of moving it that way?
Yeah, and so I go back to that February conversation. What I really started talking to people about was, where I say 10 years, 3 years, 1 year, and 90 days. Those are the worlds I live in. Is what is your 10 year, what is your 3 year, what is your 1 year, and what is your 90 day rocks or things you're going to accomplish. I've challenged people to really just sort of consolidate things down and say, well, let's make 90 days 1 month. Let's make 1 year the next 90 days. Let's make 3 years the next 1 year. What would you like it to look like next year in 12 months? And what can we accomplish in the next 90 days? And what should we do in the next 30 days? And so we've really, in those clients that really get, they can't move forward over longer periods of time, just compress the cycles
Yeah.
and
So
plan
short
it.
the runway, really like just collapse in and look
Yeah.
at what the short term is going to be.
But
That's
it's funny.
great
It's this
advice.
morning I saw a quote from Stephen Covey from a friend of mine that said, "If your ladder is placed against the wrong wall, every step will only get us to the wrong place faster." And so we've got to still stop and decide: is the ladder against the right wall? And so I don't care how much chaos we have going on. Shorten up the
Well,
plan.
okay, now here's a question that we get frequently, is that there is so much chaos, there is so much noise, everything looks shiny, we should do this, we should do that. It can all seem like a possible solution to the current problem. How do you focus on the right steps and not get distracted with stuff that's going to get you off top?
So I'll admit, I am on a disc profile of a high D, high I, so I love shiny objects. I've been fortunate in over 20 years of working with, in my business, my business partner, my brother, was actually the exact opposite. He loved consistency. And so I think if you're like me, if you're a visionary, you have to put in place systems that help you, vet those shiny objects against, again, I go back to the same thing. What was my mission? What was my vision? Who am I trying to serve? And does this shiny object help that? And I think in times of chaos, we're so uncertain. We're tilting at every windmill that might solve our problem versus really spending the time, slow down and take the time. I don't care if it's an hour, a half a day, really saying, okay, let's get clear about what we're trying to accomplish. And then always going back to those basic tenets to test those things. And so I referred to it as building tanks in a Honda Accord factory. And so my business was a Honda Accord factory. We did small business outsourced IT, and we would occasionally get these large government contract offers. And we would talk about the tank. Like, we could build this tank in our Honda Accord factory, but at the end of building it, our employees will be miserable, our factory will be wrecked, and we will not be able to continue to operate forward. And so sometimes it's about really saying no to really as much as you say yes to. It's the Tim Ferriss theory, right? It's not a hell yes, it's a hell no. And so I think sometimes you have to be okay just saying, this isn't the right thing. Slow down, retrench, and focus.
Being able to say no thank you is a huge part of being strategic. So when we first started, you mentioned four key things, and one of them was being a great boss. And that's pretty interesting because that can be a really key area for entrepreneurs right now. Why do you think that's so important?
Well, let's be honest. Most of us started a business and we were solo entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, and we began to build a team. I think if you're lucky enough to build an organization where you have a team, you have an obligation to treat them well. And so I think in times of crisis, if you're uncertain, think about the people you have working for you who might then be worried about their livelihoods and where they're going. And so it's critically important that we are being clear with our team. We have to even in uncertainty, we have to show a sense of confidence. And so being very, strategic in what we're saying and how we're saying things. I feel like it is an obligation that we took on when we made that arrangement to have them come work for us. And so we owe them a debt of consistency. And so it's not an option to not be a great boss, right? I mean, it is absolutely a requirement to be a great boss and treat your people well.
Great. Because as we all know, we want our employees to do great work for us. We want them to feel invested and a part of that. But how do we actually translate being a good boss into getting them to be accountable for doing great work in our business?
Yeah, that's true. So I always say you can't make someone accountable. They can choose themselves to be accountable. So when I think about accountability, that is an outcome of two other things. And so I always say L plus M equals A. So leadership plus management equals accountability. And so if we can't make someone accountable, how do we have them decide to be accountable? And so what we first do is we have to be great leaders. And great leaders is having a really clear vision of something that people want to be part of. What is the greater good and how do they fit into it? And being consistent in the communication of what we're trying to accomplish. And then the second piece is management, right? It's working in the business with them, being very clear about how we're going to accomplish what we do. What is it they need to be doing and how do they measure success? And so I'm a big fan of everyone having a number, everyone having something they can measure themselves to. And so when you go back to there's a story about an old steel mill that a wealthy businessman bought. And when he came in, it was the worst performing steel mill he'd ever seen. And he asked the day shift, how many heats did you produce? That's how they measured steel. And they said 7. And so he took a big piece of chalk and he wrote a 7 on the floor. The night shift came in and said, well, what is that? And they said, that's how many heats the day shift produced. At the end of the day, they struck out the 7 and they'd written an 8. The next day, the day shift struck out the 8 and they wrote a 9. That factory went from the worst producing to the best producing because they gave people something they could tangibly see and measure for their personal success every day. And so we have to, as leaders, find a way to take what we're trying to accomplish and make it very clear to everybody on our team, this is what success looks like when you leave at the end of the day. What's your number that you wrote down?
Right. But also, the example that you just gave created an opportunity for them to have teamwork and camaraderie with each other on the shifts and have that connectedness within the organization. But we've lost that right now. That's gone. We're working from home. We're remote. We're not seeing our coworkers as much, or we're seeing them too much on Zoom, however you want to call that. But now that you have staff that are doing that remote work and they're off-site, how do you still ensure that they're feeling connected to that mission and that measurable gain?
Yeah, so I think it's about making intentional effort, and so I challenge a lot of teams to say, are you creating space for conversation? So it's about having meaningful meetings, right? It's not another meeting; it's about having meaningful meetings where your time is spent really solving things. But it's also about just creating space for communication. What I found is that when we can't physically get together, more frequent small group engagements work really well to allow a team to still feel connected. And it's really, it's about the entrepreneur being among the team. Management by walking was the way I always led, out among everybody in the company where they were. But then, now you can't walk among them. So how do you virtually walk among them without being disturbing of it? So, I had pivoted last year into actually having daily 30-minute check-ins at 1 o'clock. And I said, here's the deal, guys. I'm going to be there at 1 o'clock for 30 minutes. I don't care if you come or you don't come. I don't care what we talk about. It's just going to be time for us to connect together. And so finding whatever that rhythm is where you're communicating, but also looking at all of the Zoom meetings we're having and saying, is this meeting being productive or reporting? And so I'm a big believer that meetings are not about just reporting data. You can do that in many other forms, an email, recorded video. It's asynchronous, but synchronous conversation should be about really solving a problem and taking the time to get everyone's input so you get everybody's buy-in.
Well, exactly. I mean, and communication is key to that, like you pointed out. And we feel like we have these meetings and we are communicating. We tell people what's needed, but people still aren't getting it. Why does that happen?
So it's funny. So somewhere 7 and 77 times is how many times you must repeat yourself to have people hear you. Because everyone processes information differently and at different times. And so what I find is too many entrepreneurs say, well, I told them. Yep. I told them once. I've already told them that. And my answer is the way you have to do is flip that over and say, Great. I've told them that now once, twice. I only need to do it 76 more times. And so you really have to find ways to continually repeat yourself. There's a book from the 70s called Parent Effectiveness Training, PET. And it says that raise good children, which I think is much like raising great employees, is you have to have a small set of rules, repeated often, and held deeply. And so if you have a small set of things you're communicating, you repeat them often, and you truly hold them deeply in the way you're operating, just like children, employees will get on board what the organization's doing. And so, employers can't believe that it's a one and done. It is a once, I advocate for quarterly state of the business meetings with all staff in a small entrepreneur-led organization. And then between times, the line management needs to repeat what's important. And then you need to have those, and they're in a consistent part of how you make decisions. When you're telling someone, here's what we're going to do and why, the why is back to the what. And so you just got to find a way to repeat it 17 or 77 times.
Wow, that's amazing. 76 times to get your employees to understand, but having the patience to be able to do that is also a critical part of the communication. Okay, so when we started out, you told us you were going to talk about 4 topics. We
Yep.
touched on certainty and clarity. We touched on being a great boss just now. But one of the others was self-care. And you said that it was important for all entrepreneurs. But what does self-care mean?
So I think it's creating time and space for ourselves. Too often entrepreneurs are the get it all done themselves people, and they're not giving themselves enough space to be, good for the company, right? So, when was the last time you took a break, a vacation? And a vacation can be a day, sometimes a week, but taking the time to get away, to get distance is important. And everyone should do that, especially the entrepreneur. The business leader should take. Is it a Friday afternoon golf? Is it out hunting one Tuesday, where you're getting really away to gain perspective? So you really, again, it's creating. We're back to the clarity conversation. So we're back to the idea of creating clarity for ourselves. And there's a practice called taking a clarity break that I really believe in, that entrepreneurs not only should take vacation away from the business, but also should take clarity breaks to think about the business.
Okay, so I'm an entrepreneur. I've heard what you've said. It's resonated. I caught it on time number 1, not 76, and I'm ready to make some space, go away, and think. Well, what do I do when I get there? What am I supposed to be thinking about? How do I encourage that mind-opening opportunity?
So it is a practice, and it's a practice much akin to meditation, yoga, or anything else. It takes time. It's a muscle we have to exercise. And so what I challenge my entrepreneurs, whether you take an hour a week, a day a month, a day a quarter, go and sit quietly with no agenda. So this is a time,
Wait, no cell phone?
no cell phone, no
No
laptop.
laptop?
I'm a pen and paper guy. And so I believe you take pen and paper, to start with. If you have a question in your head, start with that one. If there's a big nagging thing that just is cycling, take that and just really unpack it, not to get to an answer, but just asking yourself sort of the whys behind the issue. And if you don't have anything, I'm a big fan of free form writing. It was something I actually learned at Georgia College, with an English professor, where we would have an hour and take a sheet of paper, and we were told just to write. And it begins almost unintelligible and random, and eventually you sort of hone into what's there. And by the time you're done, you sort of have a salient thought. And so it's really just creating space to think, not in the business, but on the business. What is it that we need to be doing? Where do I need to be focusing? Where am I not being successful? I'm a big fan of the what is it that I could do better? And so it's really taking that time to just answer that big question of, what's keeping me up at night? What's ticking me off? What's keeping me from being successful? And really looking internally to come to that next step. Many entrepreneurs get hung up in the we've got to do it all, and they're not really good at letting go of the vine. And I think this is the time for you to identify where things need to be let go of.
Right, because we're all busy. We think that everything's important. We've got a long to-do list. It all feels like it's on our shoulders. and we don't even feel like we have the time that you're talking about.
Yep.
I don't have an hour to give to go sit and write on a piece of paper and try to get to some point or think about the big problem that's been keeping me up at 3 a.m. I've just got to get the production numbers up. I've got to get the sales force out there, whatever it is. So how do you encourage an entrepreneur to kind of find those things that they can let go of?
So, a little story about letting go of the vine. So, a gentleman's out walking on a cliff edge. Let's just say he's having a clarity break while he's walking, and he slips and he falls. And he falls 500 feet and he catches hold to a vine. So he's 500 feet from the ground. He's 500 feet from the top, and he looks up and he looks down and he yells to the top, "Is anybody up there?" And he hears a voice that says, "Do you believe?" And he looks down and he looks up and he goes, "Yes." And the voice that moves down says, "Then let go of the vine." He looks down, he looks up and says, "Is anybody else up there?" So sometimes we have faith, right? So letting go of the vine, I think, is the act of identifying things that others can do. Maybe not as great as we can do them to begin with, but over time they can take the task on. And so, whether it's letting go of accounting, or whether it's letting go of writing a proposal, whether it's letting go of counting the boxes of tissues in the bathrooms, whatever it is you're doing that can be done by someone else 80% as well as you, so that you can focus down on those core things that only you can do. As a leader, we can only lead. We're the only ones who can lead. And so we need to find ways to let go of some of those other things. And it took me a long time to do that. But over time I got really good where I had others doing most of the day-to-day of the organization, because I slowly found people that were what I thought were maybe as good as me. Turns out they really were all better than me at those tasks. And really, I got the opportunity to be focused on what it was that meant to lead the business. But you really, how do you, people say, I need to find the time. My answer is, we don't find time. We don't make time. We take time. And there is always enough time for what's important. It's put it in the calendar and commit to it. It's, no one gets in shape accidentally. No one gets successful accidentally. Everyone believes that great entrepreneurs are overnight successes. And I'm like, yes, they are, over 20 years. It's a 20-year overnight success, but it takes consistency in executing what it is that's important. And so taking time for ourselves, taking time to be healthy, both physically and mentally. I think taking time to spend with our family. People call it a work-life balance. I call it a work-life flow. There's never a balance. You will never reach equilibrium. It is a constant ebb and flow. And so there are times in my life where, weeks that I didn't stay late. I didn't go to any evening events in the community because my family needed me. And then there are months that I saw my kids at 7 a.m. and didn't see them, before they went to bed, because at that point I had flowed to the other side. And it's a constant movement, but we have to take time to take stock of that. And that's, it's my clarity break is Friday at 2:00 from 2 to 5 every single week. I give myself 2 hours, and I can take it by myself on the golf course. I can do it anywhere that I find room for myself. And that's what's important.
All right. So again, we started out with clarity and certainty, being a great boss, making time for self-care. And now we're going to talk a little bit about growth, because that's something that all entrepreneurs should be thinking about, especially in these challenging times. But why is growth so important?
So I think that I subscribe to the belief that says if we're not growing, we're dying, and so it's an either, it's not, there's no static state. There's no that attrition will happen if we're just sitting still. And so I think every business should be looking at, how do we continue to grow, either whether it's growth in the services we offer to be relevant to our clients. Technology's funny. So I had 100 clients that had 140 buildings with 9,000 employees. If I was still in business, I'd have 9,000 employees in 9,000 buildings right now, because everyone went home. So if we're not prepared to pivot to what our clients need and grow with them, we're gonna die. So I think that at a base level, we have to be focused on that, but also opportunistically, if we've done the right things in times of challenge, is the greatest opportunity to grow what we do, but also potentially grow where we do it. It's, there's always someone who didn't do as well as we did. And maybe that's an opportunity for us to bring great people into our fold because we've got a great vision.
Well, I mean, I think right now everybody feels like they're concerned that the pandemic has just changed things. It's created all these challenges, but we are hearing that there's actually a fair amount of opportunity
Absolutely.
that can be recognized right now, even some opportunities for acquisition, maybe. Where would you suggest an entrepreneur starts right now if they want to think about some kind of acquisition in the short term?
Yeah, I think if unless it's come to your doorstep knocking, first off, if somebody knocks, answer the door, right? If someone in your competition calls and asks you to go to lunch with them. There's always the opportunistic event. You should always be looking for that, right? It's just that's the first step. But if you're not being opportunistic, and we're not talking about an immediate thing, the next thing I think you have to surround yourself with a good team. The acquisitions we did at Infinity, we really started with a team of great advisors, right? Our advisory team, internally and externally, that allowed us to really think about what was the right acquisitions and where would they need to be to make the company most successful. That's the first starting point, making sure you've got a great team in place. And that team really should consist of, an attorney, someone who has experience in acquisitions, preferably, a great CPA. Again, hopefully someone who understands the book accounting of an acquisition, because there's a fair bit of work there. A great insurance broker. I've always been amazed by what my insurance partner understood about business and sort of thinking through scale problems. And then really, if you're fortunate enough, having somebody from a consultative side of things, whether it's SCORE or the Small Business Development Center, the SBA Small Business Development Center, they have a fantastic group of consultants that I always went to, and I jokingly refer to it as my sanity check. I would take anything I was about to do and say, tell me why I shouldn't do this. And so having those, at least those four people lined up, and then your internal leadership team that's going to help you run the business through that integration, having those people on board and part and party to that are the other thing I would absolutely tell people: be sure you have that team and in place and on board. And it's not for the fact that you're going to go do it tomorrow. It's so that when you get there, they're already part and party to it. You're having the conversations with them way before it happens. Oh, and I missed one of the most important ones. In a lot of cases, it's going to be a banker. Do you have a great banker who understands your business and where you're trying to go? Too many people try to go to a bank when they need money. I always say, go to the bank when you don't need money, and explain yourself consistently to them. I met with my banker every quarter, and I would show them our full book financials, and I would explain both the successes and failures so that when we were doing something, they were comfortable with why we were making those decisions. So that's the team I would have.
Okay, so in a perfect world, we have lined up that team. We've
Yep.
got the insurance guy, we've got the banker, we've got the CPA, we've got the lawyer, we've got everybody, we've got a great internal team.
Yep.
Okay, but then what?
So yeah, so I think obviously I'm a big fan. It's a lot of conversations, it's a lot of kissing frogs and going on first dates. That if you do a true acquisition, right? So and by the way, I don't use the word merger. And people can use the word, but I generally stay away from it because the word merger presumes equals. And really everything's an acquisition one way or the other. If it's a merger of equals, how do you define who wins? So in an acquisition model, you're going to have a lot of conversations with whether you're acquiring a new market by just organically standing it up or actually going and buying somebody's business. You want to be focused on a consistent cadence. We had a rule that said if we were going to go into another market, all five of the executives had to agree to go be in that office 1 day a week for 2 years. So we actually had an acquisition opportunity in North Atlanta, way North Atlanta. And we got pretty deep into the conversation until one of my other executives said, so are we all prepared to go 1 day a week for the next 2 years to this office? And the group looked at each other. It was the first time we'd actually stopped and asked that question. We went, no. And so none of us I'm not driving to North Atlanta 1 day a week from Macon, Georgia. And so we actually didn't do that. But I think it's just being very methodical in your steps, having that clear. Again, I go back to it. It's not complicated. It's just hard. A clear vision, a clear plan. It's part of what we're trying to do. And really being able to vet those opportunities against that core effort tells you whether you should do the right thing.
Right. So trusting the system that you put in place instead of trying to make things fit and justify why it's a good idea, right? Just collapsing
Absolutely.
back, trusting what you had. Okay, Rob. So we've gone through the four big points. I'm going to let you summarize and bring that up as we close.
Okay. So yeah, so again, I go back to those four things that every entrepreneur should be focused on right now, really any day of the week, but especially while we're under duress. It's, have clarity, forget certainty, we won't have it. Be focused on being a great boss. Lead your people well. We owe it to them. We owe it because they have come and joined our cause to do well. Communicate with them consistently and often in an intentional way. Take time for yourself. Be very mindful of that hour, that 30 minutes, whatever it is you can spare to take a deep breath and really give yourself space to think about what's important, to really focus on how we take care of ourselves and everyone around us. And then don't be afraid to grow. This is an opportunistic time to really look at your business and say, how do I grow it, either through growing what I offer, or whether I grow it by acquisition. Ultimately what we don't want to do is be one of the losers on the other side when things pivot back, and we don't want to be weak when there's actual economic growth again in our local businesses. And again, it's a 20-year overnight success story for all of us. We've got to be really focused on getting up and being consistent in a plan that we get up and execute every single day, and really just taking that time to be certain of that, and again, communicating it well.
All right. Thank you so much, Rob. Again, for those watching from home, on replay, on any of our different social media channels, this is the third installment of an entrepreneurship series. We thank Rob Betzel for being with us today, but be sure to catch the other episodes as well. Thank you so much, and this will wrap it up.
Thank you.